Now, you might have seen some recent headlines about toxic chemicals in tampons. And who knew that lead and arsenic were in those things? A couple of weeks ago, and to be clear, we were going to run this segment last week, but then we got pushed from the assassination attempt, which kind of filled everyone's feed. But it's been about 2 weeks now, but all of a sudden I saw all of these "I knew it" posts. Can you believe this? And these always occur whenever another unreliable study hits the mainstream and is taken over by publications that just want to grab the headlines. Now, instead of reacting, I just waited a few days because I knew experts would weigh in on this topic, and I wasn't disappointed. So off the top, the level of chemicals detected in tampons were nowhere near harmful, but that just doesn't make for a good headline in the attention economy. So let's look at a few examples of people clapping back at that study, or at least the way that some journalists covered the study. So on her Substack, Immunologic, biomedical scientist and friend of the pod, Dr. Andrea Love, wonders why tampons would have lead in them in the first place. Well, as it turns out, a lot of them are made of cotton, which pulls in lead from the soil. In fact, all of our cotton clothing and textiles contain lead. So if you're concerned about tampons going inside of the body, Dr. Love points out that the structure of the vaginal mucosa and epithelium is in our skin is pretty similar. Plus, she points out, tea leaves contain roughly 42 times the amount of lead as tampons.
No, that's a lot. And you're like steeping that in hot water, right?
And I believe it goes inside of your body as well.
Stop drinking tea. The takeaway is to stop drinking tea.
Yes. Right.
Bottled water has between 10 and 32 times as much lead. And cannabis has 16 times the amount. So I guess we're all in trouble here.
I knew it.
So point being, everything in existence is chemistry and the dose makes the poison. As Dr. Love points out, the study controls weren't even that good. There was too much variability between the production process of the brands that were chosen to be studied. And the sample size was only 30 tampons from 14 different brands, which is tiny. But that didn't stop wellness influencers and naturopaths jumping on the headlines to sell supplements, writes gynecologist and also friend of the pod, Dr. Jen Gunter. She published an article called "Don't Panic About Lead in Tampons" on her Substack, The Vagenda. Now, here are Dr. Gunter's 5 key takeaways, exactly how she wrote them. The arsenic, cadmium, and lead levels in this small sample cannot reflect what is found in all tampons. The source of the arsenic, cadmium, and lead is almost certainly the soil. It's possible that the non-cotton components of the tampons could interfere with testing, so there are some unknowns. Extracting metals with nitric acid and then baking them for over an hour at 180 degrees Celsius is not reflective of what will happen in the vagina. Gotta love Dr. Gunter's candor. Finally, even if the results are correct and reflective of what is in tampons, if all the arsenic, cadmium, and lead made it into the vagina, highly improbable, very highly improbable, she writes, the levels are still within safety standards. All right. Finally, epidemiologist Gideon Meyerowitz-Katz weighed in on his Substack called Health Third, which is also excellent. He notes something relevant to the broader wellness industry, the naturalistic fallacy, or the idea that what's natural is better or pure. He writes, quote, "It's also interesting to note that there were no meaningful differences between organic and non-organic tampons, which implies that these contaminants are environmental rather than caused in the production line. It's likely that the extremely small quantities of lead and arsenic are simply present in the soil that the cotton, which is used to make the tampons, is grown in." So again, chemistry is everywhere inside and outside of us. Humans are, at a fundamental level, biochemical beings. Replicating chemicals inside of laboratories doesn't make them bad or toxic by default, just as nature is not always benevolent. So the next time you see a scare headline about toxicity, just wait a few days before coming to a conclusion. The reality of our media environment is that we need to build in time between the damage that clickbait journalists do before people who actually know what they're talking about can weigh in.